Ceap mé go raibh muidig déanamh dul chun cén maidiú le choramíocht inscne ach an seachtain seo caite gabh mé mo gcuichas as an choramíocht inscne bhí gceist ach tá muidir reis a rís. Níl an lucht ormh se ach ní féidir gan rud a rá. Last week I welcomed the gender equality and it was wonderful. We had finally got all women, which now we're back to all men with one woman, and I welcome you behind there. And I couldn't let it go without making a comment on it. It's startling. Let me say, I found this fascinating reading, and a good news story. A huge amount of money available for disbursement, and I'm not sure how it has become a bad news story. So we've gone from, and I know I come back. So amounts transferred to the fund between 2003 and 2016, and it's presumably more since, 842 million, some of which is for disbursement. A wonderful good news story. The net transfers is 549 million, and we're averaging a payout every year of, is it 26, 27 million. Now, first of all, just let me get me some critical things correct. Each department is faced with a dilemma because they don't get this money up front and you have to take the money out of your voted money. Is that correct? Okay. And then subsequently you get it back from the Dormant account, which is managed by the NTMA. Is that right? So the NTMA manage the money, invest the money and look after the interest rates. Then each department has to take money from their voted budget to give out.
That's right.
Okay. And then you get it back from the Dormant accounts. Right. Okay. So the next thing then is significant under payment going out. Now, I don't wish to be too critical, really, because it's a wonderful story. It should be a wonderful story. But we've an opening statement, and the Chair has already referred to it, and I had marked myself. And you've spent most of the opening statement telling us what we know, and not dealing with the issues that were raised by the Controller and Auditor General. And there were very practical issues, with one recommendation. So, certainly for the future, I think an opening statement, we don't need the background because we have it. I got it in the briefing document, I read it. I got it in the chapter, I read it. I got it in just about all the other documents I've read. So what I needed from you, Mr McCarthy, was dealing with the issues raised. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, the review, the statutory review, you've broken the law. You've not complied with your obligations under the law to carry out a review, isn't that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes,
now, I appreciate that you've come on this late. I want to say that on the record. I think July last year, the responsibilities were transferred to you.
That's correct.
And prior to that, we had I don't know how many different departments. Will someone tell me there was a Dormant Accounts board that was functioning? Was it functioning well originally? This scheme was set up in 2003. It was managed by a dormant fund account. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Was it working well?
Well, it was abolished in 20...
No, was it working well?
I'm not in a position to offer a view on that.
Is anyone here in a position to tell me, was the Dormant Funds Board working well, and if so, why was it abolished?
Is there any here that dealt with the Dormant Accounts Board over the years?
I think, to be fair, it was a government decision of the time to move away from the Dormant Accounts Board structure and to bring the responsibility back into departments. I'm not fully au fait with the thinking at the time, but certainly there was a move, for example, to reduce the number of agencies.
If you have no opinion, that's okay. If it doesn't come under your remit, that's okay. Yeah. But it's important to say there was a board there.
That's right.
And I see no evidence before me that that board wasn't working properly, and so therefore we needed a new system. But what I do see before me is not your fault. It's gone from the department to department with serious underspend of money that's urgently needed. So that's a question that I'm going to take up in relation to what review was taken of the Dormant Funds account at the time. Why was there a need for a change? What lessons were learned? Now we're in a position where we've gone forward and you're not complying with your obligation. Did the previous department not comply with its obligation under the legislation as well? That review was due 3 years after, within 3 years.
Yes, it should have been concluded. It should have been concluded by December 2016. Okay. So it should have been concluded within 3 years.
So when should it have been commenced?
Within 3 years.
I know. When should it have been commenced?
I think the legislation sets down when it should be concluded.
I know that. I
rather
understand
than
that now, but you have checked this out. When should
ideally,
No,
you would expect
ideally, under the legislation, what was the final date within which this review had to
December
start?
2016.
December. Had to start by December 16.
Yeah.
So really,
No, conclude.
conclude. When did it have to start?
The legislation is silent on when it needs to start.
All right. So that's a little gap, is it?
Well, not necessarily. Well,
It is because there's no review now. Just stick with me for a second, and I'm just asking very specific questions.
Well, I suppose if a piece of legislation sets down when a review should be concluded by, it becomes, I suppose, imperative that you would identify what are the requirements in terms of a review.
So it should have been concluded by December 16.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and we're now in February 18.
That's right.
Why hasn't the review started and been completed? Just a simple answer now.
Yes. Look, we're moving. To commence the review now.
No. Why hasn't the review commenced, and why hasn't it? I don't wish to place blame. I simply wish to find out why. Was there a shortage of staff? Was it that? I'm not giving answers. I'd like you to give me the answer. Why wasn't it completed?
I can only speak for where we are at the moment. Certainly, the review should have happened in line with its statutory requirements.
Sorry, just my question is why. If you can't answer,
I can't say why it didn't happen before December 2016, other than that at the time the department with then responsibility did consult with other departments in drawing up a new scheme, and may have formed a view that was sufficient in terms of meeting the requirements.
No, there's something serious. Just a second. There's something seriously wrong here. This is your responsibility since last July. The question was asked one of my colleagues: what was the handover? Were problems identified? Did they say this is top of the list? No. Was that said? Was this top of the list when you took over this? Were these problems highlighted?
Certainly for me, the CNAG report would have highlighted it.
Okay. That's not my question now. Was it highlighted when it was handed over, these serious issues of underspend? No.
I don't know what was highlighted as part of the handover discussions. I'm simply not in a position to comment on that.
Okay, that's fine. So then we have the Controller and Auditor General coming along, and you've accepted his major recommendation, which is not really his recommendation. It's an obligation under legislation. When is the date for that to be completed? Who's carrying it out?
Well, there's a first meeting has been established for the 21st of February.
The first meeting is going to take place on the 21st of February. With whom? With whom?
With the departments who will be a party to the review. The NTMA will also be invited to participate.
Who's carrying out the review, and when is it going to be completed?
As a department, we will be leading on that review. We'll be conducting the review with the involvement of each of the departments that have an interest.
What's the date of completion?
Q2.
What does that mean? Sorry, just Q2?
By June.
By June.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely, by June. Okay. Why was there no action plan? If it's the same answer, I'm going to say it. There was no action plan in 15 or 16.
2015, yes.
15, because the previous one in 14 was late, and it was felt there was no need for one in 15.
Again, I'm speculating, but that seems to have been the reason behind it. Certainly, there should have been an action plan, and we said that.
And there wasn't. So, without an action plan, one can't see what projects are identified. Isn't that right? Except
that departments were still operating off the 2014 action plan at that point, given the lateness of the production of the action plan. I think it is an issue. I think it is an issue generally in terms of the calendar of activity in this. It's an issue that individual departments have identified as a factor in the underspend.
These issues are coming to our attention because of the Controller and Auditor General's report. They're not coming to our attention proactively from the various departments, which is extremely worrying, because there should be an inbuilt review in relation to what's going on to give out this money. Now, just to clarify something, if an account is dormant for 15 years in the list of institutions, the various institutions, then that money goes into the Dormant Accounts Fund, but the owner is allowed to retrieve it at any point.
That's correct.
Okay. The credit unions have never come into this.
No. And
you have no view on that's a policy decision.
That's a policy matter for government.
That's okay.
Yes.
So now, in relation to the money that goes in, how much money has to be kept in reserve in case people come back in the future?
NTMA colleagues might want to comment on that, but the current value of the reserve is.
I know what
is
the current
18
value.
million.
I just want to know what has to be kept in reserve. How much money is available for disbursement? Had we a full team dispersing out the money?
Deputy, so just to give you some background, so as Ms McCarthy said, at the end of this just a year gone by, there's 270 million in the fund. As you said, there's a reserve fund effectively of about say 80 million, and that really represents the reserve fund for potential future reclaims.
80 million.
80.
So you had some formula for coming up with.
So roughly.
It's okay. I just want to know the mechanics.
Yes.
So you keep that much in reserve, and everything else can be given out.
Everything else is in what's called an investments and a disbursements fund for
to be given out by the various departments if they were able to do that. So 80 million is what's just kept in reserve.
Yep, so
okay. Now, in relation to the social enterprise schemes, just one last thing to put in perspective. Last night I took a phone call from an organisation in Connemara called Changwal Nanog, and they've just got a letter from the, I keep calling it the VEC, the new GETB. Yeah, thank you. To say they're going to close. Now, this is a special centre for children who drop out of school. And they're going to close. They've been told they're going to close. And I'm looking at a massive amount of funds here. I just got it last night. I'm going to get more details on it. Last year, all the politicians in Galway were called to a meeting where the Youth Federation, or an organisation like that, was about to close. No money. 2 weeks ago, we got a call in relation to an essential service where access takes place in time for us, about to close at the end of March, and so on. And then social enterprise ideas coming forward, various ideas of, one example, bicycles and repairing bicycles. They cannot get a leg in to get help. Now, I understand, so that's just the background, and I'm only mentioning a minute. Common, who represent all of the cooperatives throughout, in the Gaeltacht and on the islands and throughout Ireland, have made presentations to all of us, struggling to exist. There's something seriously wrong here. I don't wish to blame you individually at all, but is there any feedback, is there any mechanism? We'll take the cooperative movement of this common accord common. Have you engaged with them? They were up here in Buswells and they were in the Dáil telling us just a tiny amount of money would make such a difference. Have you engaged with them in relation to the dormant accounts?
I don't know what engagement there has been with specific named organisations, but I can certainly say in respect of social enterprise, there is, as you rightly point out, a measure in here in respect of. So there is under our dormant account action plan a measure in respect of supporting social enterprise. In the period under examination, the spend has been slow. Over 2015 and 2016, 974,000 was drawn down. There has been a gathering momentum under that. In February 2017, there was a separate call for proposals, and as a result of that, 1.648 million was allocated in 2017 to 42 social enterprise projects around the country.
Have you developed your policy on social enterprise? Or are you still working?
Just to complete it out, there's a separate current call out under dormant accounts funding under Social Innovation Fund Ireland to support social enterprise. Also, that's a 1.6 million fund.
A huge underspend on that as well.
That's only out for an invitation of expressions at this point under Social Innovation Fund Ireland.
The Social Innovation Fund Ireland was huge underspend.
That's right. Again, that's been slow to get off the ground, but it has gathered momentum in 2017. There's been a significant increase in spend in 2017. It's over 2 million in 2017. There's a particular feature of that, just to be fair, where Social Innovation Fund Ireland are required to source matching funding from private philanthropists. So that is a constraint on their capacity to gear up. They've identified at this point, we understand, a potential 10 million pipeline of private philanthropist donors, so that will allow them to continue to gear up. It's a new organisation, it's been getting off the ground, they've staffed themselves up, so we do expect there to be more activity. But between the two social enterprise funds that are currently spending, there's a separate commitment to a further 2018 call under the social enterprise measure also this year, and we are, as you refer to yourself, developing an overall policy on social enterprise.
When will that be ready?
Again,
who's developing that?
First half.
Is that in-house?
It's in-house again.
In-house.
We're relying on some of the same people to develop
That's okay.
that as our management.
When is that going to be ready?
End of quarter one. Is the target time.
So at the end of March?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, obviously,
that'll be available. We'll see that.
well, that's in terms of the work that's been done on it. It'll obviously, proposals will have to come to the Minister and so on in the usual way. So, but certainly it's our intention to publish that in the early part of this year.
When, roughly?
Our work will be concluded in Q1. Quarter one, sorry, end of March. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the target.
All right.
We've also taken over responsibility for the community services scheme, as you probably know.
For the which?
The community services scheme.
Yes.
So again, there's a social enterprise dimension to that, and all of that will feed into the social enterprise policy. So the organisations that you're referring to, while I'm not familiar with the precise detail of what their issues or their needs are.
They're not individual organisations.
No, I know that.
It's the representative organisation for the co-ops on the islands and in Connemara and throughout the Gaeltachts. They set out very clearly what's necessary. I would have thought it would be the first point of engagement.
Well, look, we'll be happy to engage with them as an input to the development of the social enterprise policy, because it is an area where we see a significant potential and a significant potential to grow our activity.
Can the Chair has been very polite with me, I'm sure I'm finished, but just in terms of the review, it's absolutely essential that the review should look back and learn, but the review is also essential to look forward, to change your modus operandi. It's not possible for all these departments. There needs to be a focused team with full-time employees looking at this. This money has to be given out. Ye can't do it. It's quite clear. With the best will in the world, you did say that the 2 or 3 people you identified are not assigned totally to this. It seems extraordinary to me that it takes the Controller and Auditor General's report to make you reflect. There was no sense of urgency. In fact, the response to the Controller and Auditor General's report, it was part of your work programme rather than, oh God, we need a review very quickly and we need to come up and say where we're going with this. And if I thought that was coming out of today, I'd be delighted. I think it would be worthwhile if that's what was coming out of today.
But I can assure you, Deputy, we do recognise the importance and the urgency of this. Even in terms of preparing our 2018 action plan, we want to be able to draw on the lessons of what has worked and what hasn't worked in the past. And we're exercised to do that.
Just Pobble has an administrative role. Has it a feedback role for you? Does it give you a feedback role in relation to what's needed on the ground?
It does. It produces reports on individual schemes. No,
that's not my question. Is there a feedback generally for what's needed in the area, the gaps, what's missing, not just on
in terms of the administration of the scheme, or in terms of
identifying gaps and needs in whatever area their function outside of the limited scheme that they're administering, or is it simply
I'm not sure that that's a formal part of their responsibility, but certainly in the dialogue with Pobble we would be drawing on their experience in terms of managing schemes, what they see as the demand that's presenting, what they see as the unmet demand in schemes. So that forms part of the dialogue with Pobble as opposed to a formal feedback responsibility.
Thank you.